Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is Left Bank Books presents writer of Vulture's legendary Real Housewives recaps, Brian Moylan, who will discuss his new book, The Housewives, the real story behind the Real Housewives. Moylan tonight will be in conversation with TV writer and podcaster Ira Madison III. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore. We would like to thank all of our supporters, the supporters of Brian and Ira, and everyone for their outpouring of love for our bookstore. Left Bank Books offers curbside pickup and delivery to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world even. We are happy to be able to bring our event series virtual. We believe that events are a way to expand your mind and bring in new thoughts to make the world a better place, or maybe just have some fun. We hope that you enjoy this event, and we hope that you support Left Bank Books by purchasing a copy for you or for all of your friends at left-bank.com. Purchasing a copy of the book from Left Bank Books allows us to keep our bookstore and staff operating. So thank you for your support. We need your support. And I will provide a link in the comments that will take you directly to the book. I am Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis. We will be taking questions from you, the audience, at the end of the event, so you can type your question as a comment at any point in time throughout the event. And be sure to follow Left Bank Books on Facebook and YouTube to be notified about all of our fantastic virtual events. We just wrapped up an event literally minutes ago and have a ton lined up for June that are for readers of all ages. Now, about tonight's book. From Brian Moylan, the writer of Vulture's legendary Real Housewives recaps, a table-flipping, finger-pointing, halter-topping VIP journey through reality TV's greatest saga. In the spring of 2006, a new kind of show premiered on Bravo, The Real Housewives of Orange County. Its stars were tanned, taut, and bedazzled. Their homes were echoey California villas, and their drama was gossip-fueled, wine-drenched, and absolutely exquisite. 15 seasons on, RHOC is an institution, along with the Real Housewives of New York, Atlanta, New Jersey, Miami, Potomac, and more. Over the years, these ladies have done a lot more than launching 31 books, a cocktail line, 2 jail sentences, a couple supermodel daughters, Andy Cohen's talk show career, 36 divorces, 14 albums, a White House party crash, and approximately 1 million memes. And if someone in the audience could do that math of what that adds up to, that would be fantastic. Brian Moylan has been there through it all, in front of the screen and behind the scenes. The writer of Vulture's beloved series recaps, he's here to tell us the full story. From the inside scoop on every classic throwdown to the questions we've always wanted to know. Like, what are the housewives really like off camera? The same. How much money do they make? But he has a lot to say about the legacy and fandom of a franchise that's near and dear to his heart and inextricable from pop culture today. A must-have for any fan of real drama and fake redacted. The Housewives is the definitive companion of an American TV treasure. And now about tonight's speakers. Brian Moylan is a Real Housewives anthropologist and writer for Vulture, The New York Times, The Guardian, and elsewhere. Tonight, he will be in conversation with Ira Madison III. Ira is a writer living in Los Angeles and host of Crooked Media's pop culture podcast, Keep It. His television credits include Daybreak, Nikki Fresh, the upcoming Netflix series Q-Force. His television pilot Canceled is in development at Warner Brothers with his co-writer Julian Brees and producers Greg Berlanti and Sarah Schechter. Previously, he has written for The Daily Beast, GQ, MTV News, and Vulture, among other publications. In 2016, Nylon named him one of the most reliably hilarious and incisive cultural critics writing now. And the unfortunately short-lived 2018 AMC series Dietland name-checked his Twitter account in an episode. He has appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, The Wendy Williams Show, and Watch What Happens Live. And now, without further ado, I am so incredibly happy and proud to welcome our guests for the evening, Brian Moylan and Ira Madison III. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
right. I'm forever jealous that you've been on Watch What Happens Live because I don't think I'll ever be invited.
Girl, you can tell I'm a Leo because that was too long. My intro, and I loved it.
Me too. I learned so much about you all these years as friends, and all I needed was that intro.
I've been on it twice.
And were they nice to you?
They were nice. Yeah, they were very nice to me on the Watch What Happens. I'm like, I want to be in the real studio at some point, but it was very cute. They record that. I did it with like another couple podcasters. Like I did it with Daily Pellegrino. I've done it with Ben Mandelker. They do it, but like the day before, when it's multiple ones of us. So it was just like recording that in the morning, Pacific time. Was rough and ruined my day because like I wanted to drink while doing it,
Right. And then you're like showed up to work like, hey guys, I
was going to ask you, how many shots did you do and how many shots did Andy do? Because I have done a couple of shots with Andy.
I didn't see him doing any during the show, but
I've gone to watch it twice. The first time was with my hero, Jill Zarin. She brought me when she was on with her mother discussing their book. And the other time, they had like a press when they redid the clubhouse. I was one of the members of the press invited when Bravo used to talk to me. And Charlie Sheen was the guest, which was okay.
I'm going to go
to Denise joining.
No Denise. This was like pre-Denise. This was like quite a few years ago. Pre-Denise.
Cool.
Yeah. Denise got a raw deal.
She really did. But Garcelle will not let her die in vain.
No, she sure won't. Oh, wait till you watch tonight's episode. I mean...
I can't wait.
Oh, thank God for... I mean, it's like... We have Black women to thank for saving the election, the democracy, and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills at this point. I mean...
Yeah, and I'm really excited for... I saw a bit of a clip. I'm excited for Crystal as well, She's not in a show with, like, racists, at least, like, insane ones. So, like, she's able to, like, have fun, unlike Tiffany, who was just... That was true. I feel so bad for that woman.
Yeah. Well, I already watched tonight's episode, which many of you might have just watched before tuning in because it aired at 8 Eastern. And it was interesting to see Crystal having these like conversations about race with, Sutton, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, hopefully now that we're starting to diversify, we can have a lot of fans were like, kind of racist fans probably. We're like, oh, why does everything have to be about race? And it's like, let's get all these conversations out of the way, educate each other, and then we can get back to our table flipping and,
Yeah. Why is everything about race? It's because until then, all of the Bravo housewives were segregated. So they never had to talk about race.
Exactly. So that's why it's always about race. Also because, like, have you met America?
Right.
Like,
I mean, there's a reason why last year, they were like finally talking about like politics when like or 2 years ago when like Camille was like defending Kavanaugh. But they didn't do that before,
No,
but it became,
no.
Like,
I mean,
impossible to like not talk about,
Yeah. Well, and that's what we even saw with Carol Radziwill and Hillary Clinton losing, and all that stuff. And yeah, and I think for a long time I didn't really want politics in my housewives. But like I think it has, these conversations about politics and race and everything else have become such a part of all of our everyday lives. I am happy to see it reflected in the housewives, even though some of their conversations may not be the same conversations that I would. I know.
Having. And it's also so unfortunate too, because it's happening at a time where like clearly Ramona Singer is one of the worst human beings to exist, but she is like very likable this season, unfortunately.
She is.
In a way that she has not been before. And I think it's part of her like being like, well, I can't have fights with Ebony. And so she's like forced to be a human, like a decent human being in conversations with her. And it helps that Ebony is not being like Leah, who's stressing me out this season with her dog with a bone attacking. Ebony just comes off better by comparison, being like, hey, I thought this was a problem. That's it. We can move on.
I also loved when Ebony talked to Ramona and was like, hey, here's why you're saying about the help affected me, and here's why it's bad. And Ramona seemed to actually listen and grow. And then I was like,
yeah,
wait, do I want Ramona to listen and grow?
Right. Also, was it maybe the first time anyone on the show had said something to Ramona, but in a constructive way? Because usually it's just these other women, they'll yell at her, Ramona, you're so stupid, and you don't remember these things. It's Ebony was really just sort of hey, this is why this is offensive.
Well, and it was also they're all just oh yeah, that's how Ramona is. She talks badly to the staff and forgets their names all the time. And it finally took Ebony being maybe you shouldn't. Maybe that's a bad idea.
She even got through to Lou on that bus.
I mean, I was on Luann's side, though, because I was Sonja Morgan, you can't keep bringing up, why, as my friends like to say, why you got to bring up old shit? Let's keep it current. Let's keep it current, Sonja Morgan. I mean.
She's having a very Dorinda season, unfortunately. It's a little dark. It's a little dark and boring. She's my fave, too.
Really? Oh, my God. We have so much in common.
She's my fave on the show. Yeah. She's my fave.
Do you have a favorite overall?
Yes, Kenya Moore.
I mean,
and my second favorite is Dorit.
I need to close my computer, and I'm gonna pull a Nene at the virtual reunion and just get up and leave. I mean, I get it. I have come around on Dorit, but I cannot with PK. That's my.
I mean. Do we I don't like any of Kenya's men, so.
No, I mean, Mark Daly is one of the worst men we've ever seen.
Yeah, but no, I've been a Kenya fan since the jump.
Oh,
I love
same.
her.
No one knows how to play the game like Kenya Moore. When she showed up her first season, was her first season Gone with the Wind fabulous? And then
yes.
And then she shows up dressed as Phaedra from Vacation, making fun of her. And I was just you have this whole game figured out like nobody else does. And
let's talk about that, because in your book, one of the things that people have been talk about all the time watching The Housewives, right, is how much of it is producers deciding things, and how much is we saw this with Summer House recently, right? With Luke blaming production on him having to ask Canada do something, and production's no, you asked her yourself. So what is it in you doing your research and then writing the book? Is it these women making these choices themselves? Does production have a big hand, or do the shows really succeed on women like Kenya, who can come into the show and know, hey, we're making a TV show? She really broke that fourth wall at this reunion, right? The fight about talking about Bolo and the the possible sex with Portia. I really loved Kenya saying, that'd be fine not talking about it if it was a girls' trip. But she said, this is a reality TV show, and we are attached.
Yeah. No, and I think that, fans love to see the invisible puppet strings, and they love to be oh, Andy made them get back together, or they're making them do this, or, everyone has to go on the trip, blah, blah, blah. And, I think that there's a lot less of that than fans think there is. And, all of the shows are produced by different production companies, though a couple production companies make some of more than one show. Mm-hmm. And all the production companies handle things a little bit differently. So Truly Original, which makes Atlanta and Potomac, they're a lot more hands-on. And during a scene, they'll go in, and if, they're all at dinner, they'll pull Cynthia aside and be Cynthia, why aren't you asking her about this? Maybe press her more on that. Whereas the production companies that do Beverly Hills or New York, they are a little bit more standoffish and like things to happen organically. And, everybody I talked to said that they're really not at all scripted, and that, you know, production does set up some of the parties that they wouldn't be having a party otherwise, and does pay for some of them and things like that. And they'll tell the women if they're at dinner.
Rich people don't have parties that damn much.
No, people do not have parties that damn much.
It's like, even my friends who like to throw parties, you are not like having a party on Friday and then next week like Jen Shaw. You're not next week. You're not like, okay, well, and now I'm gonna have a party. You know, like just to celebrate. You know, I'm like, no one does that.
Right. No one does that. So it's like they set up this party, which is fake, but then the women and they like time who's going to show up at what time. So it's like, you get here at 5, you get here at 5:05, you get here at 5:15. So it's like the first few can talk about the ones who are going to show up later, you know, things like that. But everything the women's saying, all the way they feel, is totally organic to them. And, you know, I do think that, like a Kenya Moore, the calls are coming from inside the house a little bit. Like the women know they're making a show. They know they want to make a good show. They know they need to stay on the show to keep making money and have the platform. So if anyone's like driving these storylines or making up fake things, it's the women themselves more than the producers or Bravo or whomever who's like saying to do it.
What was, you know, in your conversations with these housewives, you know, what was like, was there anyone who like shared an interesting story involving sort of like another housewife sort of like really trying to like drive a story or doing too much, and like it sort of upset the other women? Because I have to imagine, you know, the women are constantly upset with Kenya. Because she's like, I gotta produce, but she stays on the show, so people love it.
Right. Well, and I heard that more from producers than I did from the other women, like, because I think that the other women not only get upset about that, they get upset about so much other stuff that goes on between them. But the producers really don't like it when they start producing the show too heavily, like where you can kind of see what's going on with like Elisa Vanderpump, or sometimes like Elisa Rinna, where they're like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And you know, it's messing with the show and how the producers want the show to go. And, you know, I think it does aggravate the other women, but I didn't hear from any housewives specifically that annoys them, but I know it annoys the producers when it sort of upsets their plans, or when they can tell like a woman's doing something fake. Because anything inauthentic, I mean, the audience can sense as soon as it happens. So
absolutely. In all the women that you talk to, who would you say, who are you most excited to talk to? And who ended up being one of the most like surprising people that you talked to? Like you were like, I'm going to talk to this housewife, but then you were like, oh wow, this person's actually like really interesting and sort of insightful about their role in the show and the show's role in pop culture.
I probably talked to about a dozen housewives, some on the record, some off the record. And, you know, I think that the producers and editors and story editors and all those people who work on the shows were a lot more insightful than the women themselves, just because they have a bit of a remove from it. But of the women who I talked to, I set up an interview with Carrie Duber from the Housewives of Dallas. And I was like, oh, Carrie's boring, but whatever. I'll talk to any housewife. And then I talked to her and we had this great conversation. She really dished. She talked about how it felt to get fired and how that really upset her. And she talked about how, you know, some of the women on the show she thought were real friends, but then come to find out they weren't. And she really wasn't afraid to go there and say anything I wanted. And I left being like, oh my God, thank you, Carrie Duber. That was amazing. So I thought that was kind of the best. The most excited I was here in Los Angeles. I went to lunch with Shane Keogh, who was Jenna Keogh's son.
The reason you started watching, because in your intro, you're like, who's this hot guy?
He is still so fucking hot. I cannot even like talk about it. And then we're here at lunch and I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to Shane Keough and he's gorgeous and he looks maybe even better than he did when he was on the show. And yeah, so I was very excited for that in multiple senses of the word.
So speaking of like, Carrie talking about the firing, right? You know, like what shocked you the most about just hearing from producers of sort of how people get fired from the show? Because I feel like a lot of fans feel that, you know, like everyone gets a call from Andy, and it's like, you're done.
Yeah, there are no calls from Andy. And the only person I talked to who got a call from Andy was Cindy Barshop. And she was fired at the same time as Jill Zarin, and I heard that Jill Zarin didn't get a call from Andy. So I don't know if Cindy's making it up or whatever. But yeah, there's no call from Andy, and it was all very unceremonious. Like Linda Erkelishan, who was on The Real Housewives of DC, which got canceled after one season, they didn't even call to tell her the show was canceled. She found out on Twitter. And like Carrie Duber found out she was fired when, you know, a couple, like 2 weeks after the reunion, they send out letters to everybody who's coming back. And one of Carrie's friends on the show texted her and was like, "Oh, did you get your letter?" And Carrie was like, "No, I didn't." And that's how she like found out she was, and she had to text them and be like, "Can I like go about planning my life?" And they were like, "Yeah, go ahead." And so they never even like told her she was gone, which I think is pretty crazy that they, you know, they use these women to make all this money and to make the show, which we love. But then when they're going to cut them, it's like pretty ruthless. But I was also shocked to find out that Bravo has a very healthy research department, and they research not just like who's watching, but they ask the fans who they like, who they don't like, who, you know, should we get rid of this person? Should we keep this person? They ask them what cities they should go on trips, what cities they should start new housewives. They ask like all sorts of things, and they're using all of that in their decisions on hiring and firing. And it's, you know, it's not the final word. Like, you know, they fired Phaedra for lying about Candy raping somebody without consulting the research. But, you know, with a lot of them, they're kind of saying,
did they consult the research on Teddy Mellencamp?
I mean, well, see, what I think the thing is that if they don't want everyone to be loved, they just want everyone to be getting a reaction. I think people did hate Teddy Mellencamp so much that they were like, oh, she is getting a reaction, as opposed to just how boring she was. Which if they were just like, Teddy's boring, then they'd be like, okay, let's get rid of her. But
of course, I mean, in non-Housewives, I mean, I feel like everyone knows that that's why Jack stayed on Vanderpump Rules for so long, right? You know, everyone's constantly tweeting, "I'm blocked by Jack. I hate Jack." People are gonna watch it.
Well, and speaking of Teddy Mellencamp, this is not in the book, but this is a little tidbit for you. I heard that when they were casting her, you know, her father obviously is John Cougar Mellencamp, and she was all like, my father, this, that, the other, you know, and like really selling that up to the producers. And then when she got cast in the show, she's like, my father's not showing up. I don't want to talk about him. Like,
right, because isn't he with Meg?
Yeah, it's like,
yeah, you like could not thought they were gonna get Meg Ryan on Real Housewives.
Exactly. It's like you could get John Cougar Mellencamp and Meg Ryan just to do a like breeze through at an event. Like, come on.
Someone should have held her accountable.
I mean, well, I also heard, and this is in the book, that now that when they cast Real Housewives, they want everyone to have a job, contrary to the housewife title. And Teddy didn't really have a job. And so she may or may not have found accountability coaching so that she could be a part of the Real Housewives.
That is interesting, because I'm trying to think of like, you know, like, yeah, is the whole thing like now they just sort of want people to like seem like they're working women and doing something, or do they not want women who can try and come on and try to use it to create a job? I don't know.
Yeah, I think they want women who are working, and I think that they do see the women as somewhat aspirational and inspirational. And so there are a few like on New Jersey who don't really have jobs, but the women they're looking at, they want them to be employed. They're looking for younger women. I've heard they're a lot harsher on how women look. But this was also, you know, I was doing this interviewing before they were trying to diversify the cast a bit and things like that. So I'm hoping that might have changed a little bit. We might be able to get some queer people on, some more people of color, you know.
I mean, I always forget that I always forget that Giselle has a job until she won that book award. I was like, oh, she's an authoress.
Have you read her book?
Absolutely not. Have you?
Neither have I. Know who is a multiple authoress is Kelly Cloran Ben-Simone.
Oh, Eileen Davidson. I have one of her novels on my bookshelf.
How is it?
I haven't read it yet, but it's sort of like a soap opera, like behind the scenes, sort of like mystery. So
sold.
Yeah.
So I did I did this for the book and ended up getting cut. I did a bestseller list of all the Housewives books because I remember reading about Eileen's mystery, but I did it like after. So it was all books they had written after they were on the show. And the bestseller of all the books wasn't even a Housewives book. It was Andy Cohen's book.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. But second was Teresa, Skinny Italian, and then it was Bethany's like Naturally Thin. So those, so that people like Andy Cohen and being skinny. That's what Housewives fans want.
Yeah, and of course Teresa, probably had the prison stuff. Like I think people would buy Jen Shaw's book. People would probably buy Portia's as well.
I mean, if Jen Shaw needs a ghostwriter, I know someone who has some experience in ghostwriting for Real Housewives, and his name is me. So,
so what's so interesting too is like, can you talk a bit about going from like ghostwriting like a book for Erica Jane, right, to then going to like I'm going to write a book about the behind the scenes of the Housewives, like what was the process and like just like big changes that happened immediately, because I'm sure you had so much more access writing the Erica book than you did this.
Yes.
And tell us a bit how you started to even learn that like Bravo was sort of like, okay, girl, you're
not cool.
Shocked.
Yeah. So, well, it was very different ghostwriting Erica's book or whatever, because you have a person who's willing to talk to you, and it's like one sort, it's like I'm telling her story, and so I have to write like her, and I have to kind of get the things out of her that we're gonna shape into a book. But she wants to be there, and I want to be there, and so it's a collaborative process. It was different.
Have you been subpoenaed?
I have not been subpoenaed, and we did not talk about any financial stuff, thank God. But so I've always had a good relationship with Bravo, and so I told them that I was working on this book, and then they, asked if I wanted to partner, and we talked about it, and then they made an offer to my editor saying that they would partner if they got 10% of the sales of the book and complete editorial control. And that was kind of the deal breaker. And so we were like, no, thanks. And so then I quickly found out through a mutual friend of Caroline Manzo's, who I'd reached out to see if she would talk to me for the book, that she had gotten an email saying not to talk to me. And then I heard that they had called Erica multiple times to remind her not to talk to me. And then, I started to hear more and more that people weren't going to talk to me. And then every time a housewife, current and former, wants to give an interview about the Housewives, they're supposed to call and ask Bravo if they can. And so I started making appointments with people, and then they would be canceled shortly thereafter. And it was like, okay, got it. Including Aviva Drescher. Like Aviva Drescher canceled on me because she's worried about Bravo. I was like, girl, you crazy.
Baby, they're not bringing you back.
I know, exactly. You're gone for good. And also she was like, but if you ever have any business opportunities, please email me. And I was like, no, I don't. Or are you looking to get paid to be interviewed? Like, what's going on here? Yeah. So, but I think it ended up being like for the better, because the people who I talked to like really wanted to dish, and I could guarantee a lot of people anonymity. And so I think that this is people saying what they're saying when they know Bravo isn't listening. And so I think it's like the real gossip, the real things people have to say. And I mean, in a lot of cases, I couldn't find anything. It's not like I was digging up dirt on them. I was just looking for the real story. And I think, funny enough, like a lot of people told me that they're not trying to make the women look bad. They're trying to make the women look better, if anything, and that the shows are realer than we thought they were. And so I think that this is probably even good information for Bravo to have out there. But they might not see it that way. So
speaking of real versus fake, one thing I'm really interested in, and I know you have a chapter about it, is the trips. Yes. Everyone is the same way we talked about parties. Everyone is like, what is going on with these trips? Because you watch Bravo, and all of a sudden someone's like, you know what, girls, I just thought that like we need to get away.
Right. Let's go to Ireland to find my family tree. Like
right. The wildest was the beginning of this season of Roni with Ebony. We'd love for you to come. I know I just met you, but please come to my house. And Emily being like, thank you for including me. And then having that same conversation again the next episode. I'm like, she's part of the cast.
Right. Yeah. She's well. I also love that there was a trip to Mexico that Bethany was hosting, and she tried to disinvite Ramona, and then
that one,
yeah, and then Ramona's like, "Well, I'm coming, like, because this is work, and I'm coming." So tough shit. Well, and that's what I think is really interesting is that like fans of these shows are so savvy, we're so into it, we totally know what's going on, and to then not tell us the truth makes us feel like you're calling us stupid. And so, so for the trips, Bravo is paying for the trips. However, I've heard from producers that now they need to have what they call trade-ins for the show. So it's like they're getting free or steeply discounted hotel rooms in order to get publicity on the show. And that's why you see them. They're often there in the middle of the week. They're there slightly off season. They're there when there's room for the housewives, because not only do they not want to give them peak time rooms, also they don't want housewives in production like scaring away guests that are paying to actually be there.
Yes.
And there are apparently the production company find these places, but then they have a contract with Bravo itself. And Bravo said, and they hash out how many times it gets shown, what facilities they're going to use, all these things. There's a code of conduct, which I thought was amazing, that they specify what these women can and cannot do. So like apparently throwing wine is fine, but throwing punches is over the limit. And also one of the big gripes that fans always have is, the women will always be like, oh, well, after dinner, we got really wasted and we had this huge fight or this crazy thing happened. And fans are always like, girl, where is that footage? Why is this camera crew in bed? And it turns out it's not the camera crew in bed. The hotel says you have to stop filming at midnight so as not to disturb our guests.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's like a curfew. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense to me. And it's like, if you just told us that, like our cameras got kicked out, we would all be like, oh, okay, we understand. Yeah. But instead you're making it, you're making us just like guess what's up.
Did you find anything, any difference in find out like how much more of a hurdle it is to plan like the international trips, like the one big international trip that girls do every season?
I didn't find if there was any more hurdles, but I did hear that the year Luann got arrested, they were supposed to go to Argentina, and then they had to reschedule the trip because Luann couldn't leave the country. And
that's not the housewife. That is not the housewife that you can be like, we'll just do the trip without her.
Yeah, exactly. You need Luann falling in a bush on your damn trip. Yeah, but I must imagine it's a lot harder to do that. I also learned that even when they go to a cast member's house, like when they go to Dorinda's house or when they go to Ramona's house, they have this like whole document they have to write up, and they consider that a trip, and it's like, what's the budget going to be, where's the money going, how many episodes you're going to get, so on and so forth. And it's actually harder when they go to, and more expensive when they go to Dorinda's house, because they're not getting a hotel for free, so they have to pay to put the staff up somewhere. Whereas when they're going to a resort, they get rooms not just for the housewives, but they get rooms for all the producers and cameramen and sound people and whatever that they have to bring to do the show as well.
Oh, okay. So that would make sense that New York is probably more expensive because they're always going to someone's house, like Ramona's currently.
Right. And so they're putting up people in the Hamptons, which, they usually go in the fall after the season's over, so it might be a bit cheaper, but it's still not going to be like La Quinta in, Indianapolis or something. I don't know.
What's so interesting about, the code of conduct thing, right? I'm interested in hearing about, did you find out, when they're shooting any sort of scene, just like a restaurant scene or like a public scene, right? They have a lot of those, especially in New York. What is the process for like the people who are there? Are they all people who have signed a release to be like, you're going to a Real Housewives event? Do some people not know, etc.? What's the tea on that? Because I specifically like remember rewatching. My roommate and I just started rewatching Atlanta from the beginning, and I'm seeing like a fight, and I'm like, that's Todd sitting at the bar before he'd even started getting together with Candy.
I mean, so they put up, like, I don't know if you've ever been to a filming, but you know, they'll have one of those signs like you're entering a place and we're filming, whatever. So they put one of those up, and then supposedly anyone on camera, they asked to sign a release saying that they're going to be on camera. But a friend of mine, Suzanne, was in an episode of Real Housewives of New York when they were in the Hamptons, and Bethany was at dinner carrying on, and you see Suzanne give her like the meanest side eye, and she was like, "No, I never signed anything. Like there might have been a sign, but I didn't see it." But also some of I talked to some of the restaurants that have hosted events in the past, and I talked to one called Añejo, and they've been filmed several times for New York, and they said that when people show up, they say, hey, if you don't want to be on the show, we can put you in this other area that's not going to be on camera. So people kind of get the choice whether or not to be on camera. But I always joke that they should sell tickets. I mean, that's like ringside seats. I would pay to sit next to the girls at dinner.
Yeah, if you like know where they're supposed to be going for trips and parties, like I would definitely be like, okay, well, let's go to Argentina this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Girl, let's meet the girls at Andales.
What would you say was one of the biggest, like, aside from Bravo and the production and hurdles, what did you say was one of the like maybe most biggest hurdles or most stressful things about writing the book? And then what was the most rewarding thing?
I think that, you know, the timing of this all with the pandemic was kind of crazy where, you know, I was doing a lot of research, a lot of reaching out to people. And because Bravo had blocked me, it was like cold calling people, like hunting producers down through LinkedIn, just like randomly emailing all these people. So it took a really long time to get people. And then, you know, right before COVID was starting, you know, I had a bunch of stuff lined up and planned, and I did those interviews, and then the ones I had after that started to fall apart. And so then I was like, okay, like, here's everything that I have. Like, so this is what's going to be the book. And so I found that very, you know, because I kept being like, oh, but I want this and I want this, and this isn't perfect, and I need this. And like, I had this idea in my head of what this book should look like. And then once COVID happened, I just kind of need to be like, this is it, kid. Like, here's what you have. Like, let's make the best of it. And it turns out, like, we ended up cutting like 100 pages. I had way more than I needed, but I thought I needed to get like everything because I just wanted to really deliver a book that fans were really going to like, and that I wanted it to answer all the fans' questions going in. And, you know, so I wanted to really do that and give people their money's worth. But I think the most rewarding thing was anytime I got to do stuff with the fans. Like, I went on vacation with Vicky Gunvalson to Puerto Vallarta, and we did go to Andales, and it was amazing. And I went to BravoCon, and just like being with, you know, people, our people like us who can talk about these things and know about the Housewives and feel passionately about it and all that stuff, I found was great. And I mean, there's some people who I met at Vacation with Vicky or at BravoCon who I still talk to, like people who are friends. And so that's kind of crazy to me that Housewives brought us all together. One big happy family.
You're going to have to sneak into BravoCon again?
So Bravo emailed me. So I was not invited last time, and I put on a disguise to go so that they wouldn't throw me out because they told me I was not welcome. But when they announced BravoCon last week or 2 weeks ago, I got an email with the press release from the head of PR, and all she said was, at least you won't have to sneak in this year. And I was like, okay, it's like the fatwa over? Am I allowed in now? Like, okay. Or are you being shady? Like, what?
Maybe they like the book. Maybe they like the book.
I mean, I hope they did. I don't think that there's any, you know, I am usually surprised at the things they find objectionable, but I mean, I love what they do. Obviously, I love the show that they've made. Yeah, so I don't want to piss Bravo off too much.
To wrap us up, some Housewives chit chat. What have you thought of the quarantine seasons?
The first Orange County season was tough because it was like,
I tried to dip back into the show and I was like, I'm not doing this.
Well, because it brought, like, I remember those initial days of the pandemic and how stressful it was for me, and I'm sure for you, and we don't know what's going on, and we're trying to figure this all out, and now we're all at home and what's going on. And so reliving that was hard enough. And then we're reliving it through the eyes of Shannon Bedore, a woman who once got enema stuck in her butt because she didn't know how to work it. Like, you know, like, do I want to be like hearing medical advice from her? I don't know. So that was rough. And I feel like because of the pandemic, they didn't mess around with the cast as much as they usually would. Like, I think that Atlanta needed another full-time member. So I think they probably could have shaken up Jersey a bit more, but I feel like they're being reticent to do that because of the pandemic. But it's also weird. Like, I really liked Summer House because they like took these kids, they locked them in a house, and then they
the real world.
Yeah, but they didn't have to like do the masks or anything like that, so we could pretend like it wasn't happening even though we knew it was. Whereas with the Housewives, I'm always like, oh, are you tested? Should you be doing this? Cynthia, do you really want a super spreader event wedding? Like, you know, like, I feel bad, but also
that is the question that I asked Andy when I was on Watch What Happens Live. I was like, girl, this wedding. And he basically said that, like, you know, in his way of like talking around it, he was like, you know, each state has mandates for what they can, like, production and what they can shoot. And then basically Atlanta was just like, with the production that was Cynthia's wedding, legally, Bravo could not bring a crew in and sort of like film that. It was not allowed for like a production set. It was unsafe. Right.
And meanwhile, Kelly Dodd got married on the same day, and it was outdoors and small and socially distanced. And I was like, when Kelly Dodd is taking more COVID precautions than you are, like,
right,
your shit is busted. Like, I'm sorry. But so it's really weird in that, like, I want the Housewives to go back to normal, but then I'm also like worried about their health. And I guess Atlanta got shut down a bunch of times. And so I think that's why we're seeing Housewives have a little bit of its flop season, I think, currently. And I'm hoping that once the pandemic's over and we can reintroduce some women in a more organic way, and we can get back to the exciting big trips and dinners out and parties and all that, that it'll be better.
Which new housewife, last question before we go to the audience Q&A, which show do you think is most in desperate need of a shakeup, excluding Dallas, because I think Dallas should be taken out back in the shot?
And I think she's gonna be.
Which shows most in need of a shakeup, and also of the like recent, you know, like the pandemic season, we've seen some new people like join or friends of. Who is most excited you and you want to see more of?
I am thinking that Real Housewives of Orange County is the one that's been in need of a shakeup for a long time, and I thought getting rid of Vicky and Tamara might have been enough, but it's just not giving me the spark that it once did. And that's been a problem for years, which is strange to me because they've had such heavy hitters like Vicky, Tamara, Kelly Dodd, who, no matter what you think, is a great housewife, though I disagree with her on a lot. You know, Shannon Bedore, great housewife, but they couldn't just get it to gel. So I don't know if it's at a point where it's like, okay, let's just start from scratch and, like, you know, recast the whole thing and see what we get, or if they can salvage this. But I think Orange County needs a lot of help.
Do you think a show could do a full reboot, or would they have to include at least one person from the past?
I think you probably need to include like one person from the past. And so I would suggest, like, I'm not saying that she's the right choice, but take Gina and say, like, okay, we're going to cast around Gina and who are her friends and who are her organic connections, or someone like Gina and Emily Simpson, who are friends on the show and they have a close bond, even though they just met on the show, but it's more organic. It's like Kelly and Shannon and all those girls aren't going to hang around unless they're on the show together. Like, and their relationships aren't that deep. They haven't known each other that long. It's not that exciting to me. I'm really excited about Crystal. I think that she is what Beverly Hills needed, because a lot of times those women are so image conscious, they don't want to get down and dirty and fight. And I don't think Crystal is going to let them get away with that. I think she's ready to hold people accountable and go at it. And
yeah, a friend compared her to, no, sorry, I compared her to Eileen in a bit, but my friend didn't like the way that, like, my friend didn't like Eileen either. She thinks like the thing about that is just sort of like how she sort of turned her nose at Dorit, like you're already on this show, like doing these like social hierarchies. But I'm like, I'm okay with her being sort of like a like half villain, half heroine, because like we've desperately needed a new bitch on Beverly Hills who is also sort of like, I come from money. This is the way I think that people should be behaving. Some of you are messy. It's very shades of Adrian.
Very shades of Adrian. And I like that, for a lot of seasons, Rinna, Dorit, Erica, Kyle, like they don't, like they just pick this one thing and talk. And I think that we've needed something to pierce that bubble a little bit. And so I'm hoping that between Garcelle and Sutton and that kind of nexus, and bringing Crystal and Kathy in, we're going to see a new dynamic in Beverly Hills. So I'm really excited for the season of Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
And then
it really just came PR, and like the four of them just like walking around shopping places,
Exactly.
And then
like I call it in my recaps, I call it rich women doing things. Like, it's like, what did the rich women do this week? Oh, they went shopping. They did this. Yeah. Like, no, we need a little bit more than rich women doing things. Though, I mean, I do love watching rich women do things. So even when that happens, I don't mind so much.
I'm back. I just want to say I love gossip. Like, oh my God, this is so good. We have so many really great audience questions, so I want to switch to some of those.
Okay, I'm ready.
I want to start with Kobe's question, which they say specifically, what city should Bravo add to the franchise, and what city should they get rid of? Obviously, Dallas. So you have people that agree with you, Ira. But everyone in St. Louis is always like, why can't we get a Real Housewives of St. Louis? I want to see Real Housewives of Des Moines.
I mean, well, I was shocked when they announced Real Housewives of Salt Lake. I was like, is this a joke? Like, are they punking us? But then Salt Lake ended up being not only the most diverse, shockingly, in like Mormon Central, but also, I mean, a great freshman season. And I mean, even a bigger blockbuster second season, thank you to Jen Shaw. So, I mean, I think that, we could pick like Albuquerque or Chicago or St. Louis or whatever, but I think you just need to find a really good group of women. And I mean, like we saw with Potomac, like who would have thought that they could have a housewife? But I mean, it's now the best one. So I think it depends just on the cast and the kind of women you can find, and finding a good group of women with organic connections and real relationships. That's always the best start for a Real Housewives program.
Do you have strong opinions, Ira?
I think that, you would need an off place that's not a major city. I mean, a lot of people say Chicago, but like, I don't think we need that. I think Houston could be fun, or like another California city. I think that like, it depends like I remember the reason that like, $1 Million Listing SF got canceled was because it was back when that was the era when like they didn't really know like what this stuff was, and like rich people didn't want to be like on the show or have like their shows on it. But I think that has shifted a bit now, especially with younger people, more image conscious people in like the SF tech world. I think that like a lot of like wives and like husbands might be into like being like, oh, like let's use this as like, like promo advertising for like the stuff that we're doing, and then we can get some fun stuff out of that. So definitely think like SF or like Real Housewives or like Silicon Valley might be fun.
We can have Real Housewives of Seattle, and it's all just women with short gray hair and Birkenstocks. Sorry, Seattle.
Or another fun Southern show,
Yeah, I would
really
be
sort of
down.
have Atlanta and Southern charm is like whatever, but like, I really enjoyed some of Southern charm New Orleans, like give us another Southern city and maybe a bit more a diverse one too, like a mix of people.
Yeah, agree.
Especially if you want to show that having like these conversations with the housewives are starting to have now, right?
Yeah, totally.
AMJ 205 is asking, is there anything that didn't make the book? And I know you talked on that just a little bit, but I'm wondering, like, where did you draw the line?
There are a couple pieces of gossip that the lawyers would not let in the book that I will tell Ira after this event. But there was a bunch of stuff that we ended up cutting just because there wasn't room. There are all these little chapters in between the chapters. And I'd written one about one of my favorite Housewives things, which is there's a rule that housewives can't sue their cast members. But if you're a housewife on one show, you can sue a housewife from another show. As we learned when Joanna Krupa sued Brandi Glanville for saying on Watch What Happens Live that she has a smelly vagina. And she sued Brandi Glanville for defamation for that. And there were like depositions, and Joanna Krupa's husband had to come in and say that her vagina wasn't smelly. And I mean, so that was insane. And then I also talked to Priv. Do you remember Priv? It was like this app that you could get glam squads on demand. And, I talked to them about it, and it turns out that, NBC approached them about doing this advertising, and then it worked so well, advertising on the show, that NBC bought the company. And then they realized that that was a conflict of interest. So then they had to sell the company. And that's why Priv disappeared. It's not because they were paying for advertising. It was because NBC Universal no longer owned them. So I thought it was really cool. And then there was just like a bunch of like little things. There was a whole chapter about the press and how housewives deal with the press, and how there's some press outlets that have been mentioned on the show that and women are always being accused of leaking stories and stuff. And some of these outlets that pay for stories told me they essentially have producers on retainer, and that every week they send a report about what's happening on the show. So, lots of good stuff. I wish that we had gotten in there. The bestseller list that got cut. So, yeah.
That makes so much more sense, to like that producers would be, but it's like, you can never like be on the show as a housewife and be like, well, the producers leaked it, not me.
Right. Yes. But, and I do think that housewives are definitely leaking stuff. Kenny Moore. But that also very well could have been a producer just saying like, hey, here's what happened on the event. Where's my $1,000? Because, I'm sure they're not paying these people tons of money. So, yeah.
Comment and a demand, I believe, from Brandi. So happy seeing these two hilarious geniuses. I discovered them on Bitch Sesh, and have been in love ever since. Go back on Bitch Sesh at the same time. So a little bit of a demand of both of you.
I don't know that Casey and Danielle could handle the two of us at the same time. That's just like too many voices in one room together. Maybe like a live event together would be
fun.
A good time.
No, yeah. I mean, I love Casey. We're friends. So, I'll go on whenever she asks me to. But, I mean, once you, like the thing about when you have podcasts like that, you have friends who've been on, who people love, they're always like, have this person back on, but it's also like, you're having other people come on and promote stuff, and people's schedules and everyone's busy, and you also don't want to be that person who's like, hey, like, come back on my show, like, anytime, like, constantly getting texts, like, to go on someone's show,
I feel that way a bit about Housewives, where people are always like, bring Dorinda back, bring Heather Dubrow back. And it's like, yeah, we know those people are great, but what about all the great people that you haven't met yet that, might be the next iconic person? But that said, I would love to go on Bitch Sesh with you and Casey.
Yeah, absolutely. Bitch Sesh live in London when you're back, and I'll go.
Ready. There are not enough Housewives fans in the UK, sadly, but I mean, I bet we could make enough.
I think there's somewhere watching on, what's that app? Hey You,
yeah. We'll just tell Hey You. We'll do it for Hey You. We'll film it in London and just Hey You special. original programming.
Yeah.
Jessica has a question for both of you. What is the Housewives season that you would watch again and again?
Mine is Real Housewives of New York season 3, which is the Brooklyn Bridge season. It is Money Can't Buy You Class season. It is Scary Island Turtle Time season. I mean, that to me is like the all-time best season. That or Beverly Hills season 1.
Yes. Okay. Those are very good. I would agree with those. I would throw in Real Housewives of Atlanta season 6.
Which one? Season 6?
That is the Savannah trip. That is, you've got like the Underground Railroad stuff, but that's also
by Ashley season 2, right?
Yes, that's by Ashley. You've really got like Kenya versus because Kenya and Portia are like friends at the beginning of that season.
Yes.
They've come to sort of like a they've come to like sort of like a ceasefire, as they always do, and then it like devolves. And that is also the season where I believe isn't that the season where she attacks Kenya?
Yes, that is the reunion where she
so it's such an arc. It's like coming off of that Reed Phaedra did at the end of season 5, but it's like you come into that and it's just like everyone's in such an interesting place. I was rewatching it with some friends recently, and it's such a season that goes on an arc. Like everyone at the end of that season is in a completely different place than they were at the beginning of that season. And that's a great Housewives season.
One of my favorite things for my husband to say to me is that I'm just a slut from the 90s. And I mean,
you are a slut from the 90s.
No lies there, girl. I was a slut in the 90s. Okay. Like, amen.
A microphone. Kenya's truly an underrated prop comic.
Oh my God. Kenya is like one of the all-time greats. I mean, absolutely.
All right, I think we have time for one last question, and I'm putting a link and reminding everyone to buy the book because so happy to have you both here. This has been a lot of fun. And hopefully people will buy the book from Left Bank Books and support our St. Louis bookstore, where, I mean, kind of like the birthplace of the Real Housewives. Last question from Rebecca. Who is on your Housewives Rushmore? 4. You get 4.
Oh, I have answered this before, and the answer to me is easy. It is Nene Leakes, Teresa Giudice, Bethany, and Vicky Gunvalson.
Okay. Just because of their importance, obviously. Yeah.
I feel like those are like the monumental like people that made the shows what they are today.
Absolutely. I'd agree. Yeah, those are the people. There's better presidents, obviously, post that, but that's when it was built.
Right. Yeah. And that's like the foundation it was built on. Like, I think Kenya Moore is one of the best all-time housewives. I think Sonia is my favorite housewife, but she didn't like make it in the way that these ladies made it.
Mm-hmm.
Would you, Ira, I have a question for you. Would you bring back Nene Leakes? Would you let her back in?
No. And listen, I love her. I rewatching it. I'm like, I love her. But she really just like did like as the whole point of like, and this is the conflict between like Kenya and Portia this season, right? Like we're on a reality show, we're doing this, but Portia is at least as much as she hates Kenya and the fact that she's like drilling her business in the press, she is playing ball.
Yeah.
To an extent, like she'll still be like, shut up, I don't want to talk about this, but she's playing ball. She's having the fights. She's showing up to the reunion doing it. She's fighting with Marlo. Nene would completely shut down in a situation like that. And we've seen it happen. She just removed her, like she would leave events. She removed herself from the drama. Like, like it's leaving reunions. I just feel like you don't want
she just didn't want to be there anymore. Yeah.
Didn't want to be there anymore while also trying to whip up her fan base to accuse Bravo of like cutting her.
Yeah. Buy my book from Left Bank Books, everyone.
All right. It has been such a pleasure. Like, really just love this conversation. It was a lot of fun. To the audience watching, I had a lot of comments about loving this conversation too. So, reminder, buy the book from Left Bank Books. The link is right there. Click through, support us. We would love to send the book anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, and follow us on Facebook and YouTube to see all of our fantastic events. All right. Well, have a good night, everyone. Really nice to see everyone here tonight.
Bye.